Good morning. We arrived to chapter 2 in Sefer Shmuel. Now, it really should have been chapter 1. The Jewish structure of the book relate the first part of chapter 2 to chapter 1, because it's about the prayer of Chanah. And this is closing the first story of the book. The first story of the book is about the birth of Shmuel. And it's concluded with the prayer of Chanah, which is called Tfilat Chanah. And after that, there is like a pause in the Jewish structure of the book. And then it starts the second chapter, which starts speaking about the life of Shmuel and his life in the temple with the sons of Eli, etc. All these stories, it belongs to the second part. So it's actually culminating the first part of the book, the first story of the book, which is about the birth of Shmuel. So we have two prayers of Chanah. One prayer before the birth of Shmuel. We saw that the influence of this prayer was that Shmuel was born. So it was a very successful prayer. And the second one is that we are going to learn now. It's also called Tfilat Chanah. It's a very famous prayer. It's in the style of a psalm in Tehillim. Actually, there are verses in this prayer that almost word by word can be found in Tehillim. It's very typical to Tehillim. It's, I would say, almost the perfect prayer in many aspects. And as I said before, Chachamim, the sages, learned how to pray. One of the sources to the way we are praying today is the prayer of Chanah. The Gemara says that we learn so many halachot from the prayer of Chanah. So before start learning the prayer itself, I just would say that Chachamim actually were very accurate about each word of this tefillah. We are not going to do that, but in the Midrashim, in the Gemarot, there are a lot of details that we can learn from each one of the words, and different interpretations and ideas that we can learn from each one of the words of this tefillah. I just want to mention two things. First of all, there is a midrash that says that we can find the 18 brachot that we say in Tfilat Amidah, or 19 brachot that we say in Tfilat Amidah, we can find hints to this brachot in the prayer of Chanah. I will just read a few words from this midrash. It says, Matzanu betfilat Chanah me'en yudchet. We found in the prayer of Chanah similar to the 18 brachot of Tfilat Amidah. Rama Karni Magen Avraham. So Karnit, we can say it was elevated my Keren. So what is Keren? There are different explanations. We will see the translation here, but it can be also Magen. It's like what you defends you, and we say Magen Avraham. So it's similar. Memitu Mechaye. The second bracha is Tfiyat Hametim. We said Memitu Mechaye. And it's also Mechaye Amitim. It says in the Tefillah, it says Mamitu Mechaye, Morid Sheol Vayal, etc. So it goes blessing by blessing, bracha by bracha from Tfilat Amidah, and it shows the source of that in the Tfilat Chanah. So you can say that one first version of Tfilat Amidah that Chachamim did 100 years later, in the time of the second temple, we are talking here before the construction of the first temple, 2 generations before the construction of the first temple. And Chachamim did Tfilat Amidah in the beginning of the second temple. So we are talking about few hundreds, almost 1,000 years. No, not 1,000. I mean, half a thousand, 500 years before. The first version of Tfilat Amidah we can find here in this tefillah. Another midrash in the Zohar, interesting, that it's teaching us another interesting point. It says, I will read and translate, Tachazi, come and see, Tren Nashin Inun, there are two women, Deishtakachi Be'alma, that we found in the world, meaning real women that live in this world, Ve'amri Tushbachta de Kudshabrichu, and they say the praise of God, De Kol Guvrin de Alma Lo Yimrun Acha, that all the men in the world cannot say in the same level. Which are these two women? Uman Inun, who are they? Dvorah and Chanah. We learned the song of Dvorah, we learned in Sefer Shoftim.
Last Shabbat it was after.
And it was after of the last Shabbat, yes. And the prayer of Chanah is what we are going to learn today. So they say these prayers of the women, you cannot find any man in the world that can say similar or the same level of tefillah. And they explain about specific words in the prayer of Chanah that are very special and unique. So I would say that even though the mitzvah of prayers that we are doing today, there is a machloket, what are the obligations of the women? Is they have to pray once a day or twice a day? There are different opinions about the prayers of women, and for sure, the obligation of 3 times a day that we are doing for the men, it's not the same level for the women. So halachically or practically, men should pray more than the women. But from the other side, we can say that the prayer of the women in some aspects are better or more elevated from those of the men. Because the level of connection between women and God is much higher than those of the men. So they have special spiritual connection. Because of the structure of the soul, because of the characters, the special attributes of the women, it's easier for them to connect to spiritual aspect of soul, of life. And in that way, the prayers of the women can be more elevated. We can say they can achieve more with less time. It's more efficient. Not with praying three times a day, but in the times that they are praying, they can get some special level of prayer that usually men cannot. Okay, so after all these introductions, let's start the prayer. But well, now I will read once all the prayer, and then I try to explain a little bit more of the details of it. It says, "Vatitpalel Chanah v'tomer." Well, I read that in English. And Chanah prayed and said, "My heart exults in the Lord." Exults? I have triumphed through the Lord. I gloat over my enemies. I rejoice in your deliverance, your salvation. This is the first verse. There is no holy one like the Lord. Truly, there is none beside you. There is no rock like our God.
Maybe this is Kadosh Dusha.
Yeah. We say that each one of the words we can relate to one part of the tefillah. So, talk no more with lofty pride. Let no arrogance cross your lips, for the Lord is all-knowing God. By him actions are measured. Well, the translation, it's very hard to understand even in Hebrew. Yeah. So the translation is really interpretation here. Yeah, it's really interpretation, which is a legitimate interpretation, but not the only one. There are other ways to understand that. The bows of the mighty are broken, and the faltering, what? And the faltering, the strong, no, the failures, yeah, those who failed, are girded with strength. Girded? Yeah. Men once sated must hire out for bread. Men once sated must hire out for bread. And again, it's interpretation of the words. Men once hungry, hunger no more. While the barren woman bears 7, the mother of many is forlorn. The Lord deals death and gives life, casts down into Sheol. Sheol is like hell, and rises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He casts down, he also lifts high. He rises the poor from the dust. So this is the same verse that we say in Alel, Mekim me'afar dal. So there it's Mekimi me'afar dal. It's the same almost. Me'ashpot yarim evion lo shivi im nedivim nedivei amo. So here it's similar. Mekim me'afar dal me'ashpot yarim evion lo shiv im nedivim v'chisei chavod yanchilem. So it's not exactly, but it's very similar to the verse in Tehillim. He rises the poor from the dust, lifts up the needy from the dunghill. What is dunghill? Where you throw away the waste? Yeah. Setting them with nobles, granting them seats of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, he has set the world upon them. He guards the steps of his faithful, but the wicked perish in darkness, for not by strength shall men prevail. The foes of the Lord shall be shattered. He will thunder against them in the heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give power to his king and triumph to his anointed one.
So it's Melech HaMashiach and David, no?
Yeah, so we are talking here about, I don't know, maybe 50 years before David was born. No, 50, less. 30 years before David was born. It also already speaks about David. Okay, yeah, so, okay. This is the prayer, very beautiful one, but also a little bit hard to understand. Let's start now again from the beginning with another introduction. So generally, prayer, we said prayer has three parts. We have thanking God, asking, and praising, right? So we have asking, praising, and thanking. All these parts appears in this tefillah. In the beginning, we have the thanks for God. The first verse, he says, my heart is happy with God, meaning thankful for what I got, the son, right, Shmuel. So this, we have the thanks. We have the praise of God all over the prayer. And in the end, we have the also asking for the Mashiach. So she's asking for the Mashiach and for the king of Am Yisrael. So we have all the three parts. Apart from that, which is also typical to Tehillim, to some psalms of Tehillim, we can say that the praise of God is made by educational and philosophical argument, meaning she is observing the world and seeing something special and praising the God by that, and also educate the people how should they behave and understand the world. The main argument is don't be proud of yourself. Okay, don't be arrogant. And this is, so it's educational prayer. It's not only towards God, it's also towards human. You should understand how the world is managed by God and not be arrogant. So we can see that you can integrate inside your tefillah also a little bit more extended argument. It's not only, please God, give me that and that. No, how great are you, God? Or thank you very much for what you gave me. It's also, I see how God managed the world and he's doing that, and we can understand that. And by that, I praise in Hashem. We said also about the first tefillah of Chanah. The first tefillah of Chanah is not mentioned in the verse. It only says that Chanah prayed and begged, and then he said also, if you give me a child, I will dedicate him to God. So you can see that she added like a commitment into the tefillah. But again, Chachamim in the Midrashim added in also in the first tefillah a lot of arguments. So in this case, it's other aspects. Over there, it's like having like an argument with God. I'm saying that, you should understand me because of that, you should give me that because of that. I didn't want to enter to all the Midrashim because it's really hard to understand. What?
Was a prophet?
Yeah, we'll talk about that soon. Yeah, she was, according to Chachamim, I forgot to mention that, but I will say soon. What was the point that I was started saying? So during the tefillah, the praising, the asking, etc., you can integrate other arguments in a way that you should give me because of that, you should be because of that. We saw that also with Moshe. If you will kill them, so what the people will say. So it's some kind of an argument. I have a point here. You should save Am Yisrael because if not, it's going to be Chilul Hashem. So we can see that there is some kind of integration of arguments inside the tefillah, and here also inside the praising of God, in the part of praising God, we can see that she involved other arguments. Now about the prophecy, yes, so the Midrash says, the Gemara says, that there were 7 Nevi'ot. 7 Nevi'ot clearly in the Torah, which are Sarah, Miriam, Dvorah, Chanah, Avigail, Huldah, and Esther, which is strange. It says Chanah, it doesn't say Rivka, and it doesn't say Rachel and Leah. Even though other Gemara say that all the matriarchs, all the imaot were prophets. So for example, about Rivka, we can see that when she had the problem, she didn't know about the children in her stomach, in her womb. What she did, she went to ask God. If she was a prophet, why didn't she speak with him directly?
Maybe it's different levels of prophet.
Or maybe when it's regarding yourself, you need help. So there are explanations. Okay, but anyway, according to this midrash, there can be different opinion in midrashim. We have Sarah, we have Miriam. In the case of Miriam, it says clearly, the Torah says Miriam HaNeviah achot Aaron. We read that in the last parasha. Miriam HaNeviah achot Aaron. And then it says also Dvorah HaNeviah. And then it says also Chanah, our Chanah. The last three are Avigail. We will see, it's one of David's wives. We will see the story later in the book. Huldah, it says clearly Huldah HaNeviah. It was a name. It's in Melachim. Sefer Melachim, Huldah HaNeviah. And then we have Esther. Esther HaMalka was also prophetess. It doesn't say anywhere any prophecy of Esther. But it says that she wrote her book, which was written also in Ruach HaKodesh. So it's some level of prophecy. Anyway, about that, the Gemara say Chanah. How do we know? Chanah דכתיב, ותתפלל חנה, ותאמר הלץ ליבי בהשם, רמה קרני בהשם. רמה קרני ולא רמה פקי. So, Keren, it's a horn. It's like
anoint oil
yeah, so they use Keren, horn, you say, of the animal. Yeah, like what we're doing shofar, a horn. So they use horn to put oil inside and to put on the kings. You can use also other utensils to put oil on kings, right? So we can see that some of the places it says that the king was anointed with a horn. In other cases, it says that he was anointed with pach. Pach is a box. This is pach. We call this pach as a garbage can. A can. You can say a can. So interesting enough, the Gemara says, if you notice, the kings that were anointed with horn, nimshecha malchutam, meaning their kingdom continued.
Like David.
Like David and like Shlomo. So say, David ושלמה שנמשכו בקרן, נמשכה מלכותן. שאול ויהוא שנמשכו בפח, about Shaul, the first king, and about Yahu ben Nimshi, one of the kings later in Sefer Melachim, they were anointed also. Not all the kings were anointed. What?
Yehu was only king in Yehuda, no?
No, he was in Israel.
In Israel, sorry. One of them.
Anyway, it's a story of later in the Bible, very, very later. It's far away from where we are now, but he was one of the kings in the kingdom of Judah, of Israel, that was anointed. But both of them were anointed with can, not with a horn. So the Gemara say you can see that he was prophet because she says Rama Karni. When it's a keren, when it's a horn, the kingdom was going to continue. When it's pach, when it's a can, it's not going to continue. But anyway, they said that he was a prophet. Now some of the mefarshim said all this prayer is a prophecy because it's going to allude to events in the life of Shmuel that still didn't happen. So her son Shmuel going to read a lot of stories about him. So that didn't happen at this point, and she mentions them in hints. She mentioned them during this tefillah. So she was a prophet. And this is important to understand, again, that she was a prophet, because we are talking before we have a king, before we even dream about the king. It's going to happen only later. And of course, she's talking about the Mashiach. What Mashiach? So she's really talking here about the future. And all the things that she's asked is about the future. So all this prayer is a level of prophecy. Now, we can divide this prayer to four parts. The first part is the thanking and praising God. The second part is the philosophical argument. And the third part is the answer. It's like a question or argument, and then the proof for that or the answer. And the end is the part of asking. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So the beginning is quite easy to understand. She is very happy for what's happened, right? So she's thanking God, and she said, "There's no one is as great as God." So okay, let's see again. And Hannah prayed, "My heart exalts in the Lord. I have triumphed through the Lord." Yeah, I've been victorious. So again, this is a translation. Maybe it's interesting to see other translation here. Yeah, it's a classical English or ancient English. Yeah, it's I have triumphed. I have my heart exalted in Hashem. My horn is exalted in Hashem. Okay, so this is maybe more accurate one. It's my horn is exalted. It is also my horn is exalted. My heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. Okay, so Alatz libi and Rama karni beHashem, both of them are expression of happiness, and we can say that the word horn can, the word keren can, like we said before, can express horn, which is a musical instrument also. It can also be understood as magen. Magen is when you are fighting something that defends you. A shield, yeah. My shield was with Hashem, so she was protected from her enemies. And here she's also mentioned her enemies. The question, who are these enemies? Rachav pi al oyivai, I gloat over my enemies. Who are these enemies? So the only enemy that we saw that was clearly enemy of Chanah was Pnina, the other wife. She was enemy, and we'll see that she's going to be mentioned in the future. But we saw in the character of Chanah that she was very kind. She was never attacking anyone. She was never, so maybe she kept everything in her heart, and only when she spoke with God, it went out. She really was very upset with Pnina, and she considered her. Yes, that's what I think. It's a more logical explanation, a more reasonable explanation. She's not talking about her personal life, but she's talking about Am Yisrael in general. And Am Yisrael in this time is under the government of the Plishtim. How do you say, under the yoke of the Plishtim, when they are under the yoke of the Plishtim, yeah. So she understands, and maybe because she's a prophet, that her personal victory is going to be the start, the beginning of the national victory, because Shmuel will lead Am Yisrael together with Shaul to the first victories against in the fights against the Plishtim, and later on with David the Melech, the final victory. So she understands that it's not only me personally, which can be understood. Maybe not only Pnina was against her, maybe she had other enemies, maybe she had other people that hated her. We saw that Elia Cohen was against her in some meaning and in some aspects. So maybe she had personal enemies, but it's more reasonable to explain that she is hinting here to the general enemies, to the enemies of Am Yisrael. Because I rejoice in your deliverance, in your salvation. So what Yeshua, again, it's a personal Yeshua, which will be the beginning of the national salvation. And after thanking God for that, she is praising him, and she's saying, there is no holy one like the Lord. Here the Gemara or the Zohar, I don't remember, one of the Midrashim, there's no holy like the Lord, but there are holy apart from the Lord. When you say there are no as the Lord, like the Lord, you're saying actually that there is holy, but not like the Lord. How do you understand that? There is other holies? So the answer is yes. There are other, but we need the other part of the verse. Truly, there is none beside you. Meaning, there are other things that are holy. The Torah is holy. Am Israel is holy, Eretz Israel is holy, but all this holiness comes from the holiness of God. So ki en biltecha, there's no one else, there's no one beside you, and there's no as holy as you, because all the rest of the holiness that existed in the world come from the holiness of God. There is no rock like our God. So tzur, a rock, represents strength and eternity, or something that endure for long times. And this is also in the moment of hardships, of difficulties for Am Israel, we have the rock, which is God, our trust and faith in God. This is something that gives us strength. And also in this situation, a personal, private Sarah problem, that she doesn't have children, and the national problem that Am Israel has against from the Plishtim and all the other enemies, we should understand that there's no rock like our God. So this is the first part of the tefillah, which is again praising and thanking God. Now, her philosophical or educational argument. You shouldn't be proud. You shouldn't have pride, you shouldn't be proud. Because all the things that you think that come from your own success, it's truly come from God.
That's what
And that
the 6-day war. Because a lot of mouths and then we get young people.
Yeah. There are many examples for that when people think that everything is thanks to their strength and power, when they are too proud of themselves, when they are too arrogant, then the heat come. So she says, talk no more with lofty pride. Let no arrogance cross your lips. For the Lord is an all-knowing God. By him actions are measured. So this is what the second part, which is the argument. She said you should always be modest, humble, and understand where the power comes from. And now the third part is a philosophical argument or proof. She starts with things that we can see in the world. There are several examples of radical revolution, radical change, transformation in the world, from good to bad and from bad to good. So even though you think you are safe, you are protected, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of power, a lot of strength, you should understand that everything that you think that you have is temporal. And in a second, it can change. And she gives several examples for that. She says, the bows of the mighty are broken, keshet giborim, chatim. From one side, you can see how mighty, mighty here it's plural.
Example.
Yeah. You can say that it's plural and singular. In Hebrew, we have a little bit grammatical problem here. It says keshet. Keshet is bow in singular. Here it's translated in plural, which is a mistake. It says the bows, but say keshet.
Not kshatot.
Not kshatot. Giborim, mighty, is in plural, not gibor.
That's what they pluralize in English.
Yeah, so the plural is the first one.
We pluralize might.
But we also in Hebrew we can say the bow that belong to
the one bow that belong to the many mighties.
You can say it. Sometimes
You said kshatot giborim.
This object that belong to the.
Anyway, the verb broken is in plural again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because if you talk about
if you talk about the bow, it should be keshet giborim chat.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the heroes, mighty is giborim is heroes, you should have said kshatot giborim. So the explanation here is that it speaks about the giborim. So the giborim, the heroes, even though they have bows, they have powers, they still can be broken. Or they can say that it's like, yeah, in Hebrew you can play a little bit with that to say, even though it's singular, we're talking about many bows. All the bows of the heroes will be broken can be broken in a battle or in a situation. So you think you are strong, but you are not. From the other side, and the faltering, the underdogs, those who are weak, are greeted with strength suddenly. So how this revolution can happen, how this transformation can happen. And then another examples. Men once sated meaning not angry anymore, but here usually it means rich. People that used to be rich suddenly must hire out for bread, so must hire themselves out as simple workers to get bread. From the other side, mens once hungry, meaning poor, hunger no more. Chadelu, stop to be hungry. Or we can say chadelu, they meaning stop. They stopped. We can say they stopped working because they became so rich. Right? So we can say the rich become poor and the poor become rich. While the barren woman bears 7, the mother of many is forlorn. So, yeah, according to Chachamim, here we have hint to Pnina. So, how many children Chanah had? She had Shmuel. It looks like she had 7, but when you read in the verses, we're going to see later in the chapter that she has actually 6. She had Shmuel, another 3 boys and 2 girls, or the opposite, I don't remember. 3 and 2. So it's 6. So why it says 7?
Because their husband say
I for you like a
just excuse.
like a son. There is a very, very horrific midrash that based on this verse, it says that it says, I'm better for you from 10 sons. Who are 10 sons? 10 sons of Pnina. So according to that, Pnina had 10 sons. And they said that for each son that Chanah had, Pnina lost 2. 2 died. And that's explained why she is forlorn. And then in the last one, she only had 2. And Chanah was going to have the 5th one. And Pnina begged her to ask mercy for them. And she asked mercy for them. And God say, okay, you know what? I will spare the life, but they are considered as your sons. So it's 7. She has 7, the 2 of Pnina and 5 of herself. And Pnina didn't have any. It's a hard midrash to understand. It's very no joy.
There is another midrash that says that Pnina did it only for her.
For Shel Shamayim, yeah, we talked about that. But what is hard to me here to understand is that she is rejoicing in the failure of. She's happy. She put it inside the tefillah. No, we can say she doesn't say that with joy. She just mentions the reality. Yes. Look how a woman with so many children lost. So don't be arrogant. It's all in the like for the educational purpose. Don't be so arrogant because you can see once you had 10 children and now you don't have none. So be careful. Don't speak too much. Be careful with your lips. It's what you're saying, like it says in the verse before. Let no arrogance cross your lips. Right? So she said, she doesn't say that with joy. We can also take all that to the symbolic level. Right? We don't talking about specific case. She didn't have 7 children. She's not talking about herself. And not necessarily she's talking about Pnina. We can say that generally, the fact that you have many children doesn't mean that you're going to be happy, because Chas v'shalom, something can happen. And the fact that you are infertile, burned for so many years, don't lose your hope, because it can be changed. So this is, until now, she only presented the reality. The reality that there are huge transformations in the world. The thing that you wouldn't imagine, and they happen every day. Every day there are rich people that lost everything, poor people that become rich, strong people that get sick people that get cured, always transformations in the world. What is the conclusion? In the next verse, there is a factor that is responsible for that. Only in this verse, she mentioned God, right? Since she started the second part that we said, the argument, God is not mentioned, right? Keshet Giborim Chatim, the bows of the mighty are broken, and so she's mentioning this phenomenon, natural phenomenon. And then in number 6, she is mentioning Hashem Memitu Mechayez. The Lord deals death and gives lives. Some say that here we have hint to the idea of the revival of the death, because it says Hashem Memit Umechayeh. He deals death and gives life. How should it be? Gives life and give. So gives life, we can understand not in Tchiyat HaMetim, not in revival of the death. We can understand people get born or people keep living. So Hashem gives them life. But if it was like that, it should be first life and then death. Why it's first mentioned death and then life? Again, it's a hint also the death are going to live with the will of God.
It could be also talk about the crisis in life. Somebody is in crisis and then Hashem take him out.
So this is the second part of the verse, we can say, Morid Sheol Vayal.
Yeah.
But here it talk about death and life. It should have been the other order, because usually you first live, and then you dead, not otherwise. So maybe, but surely what he speaks here is that the death and life comes from God, and he decides who should be living and who. What is that noise? Ah, it's me. Yeah, it was no. Yeah. Never mind. So the Lord deals death and gives life, casts down into Sheol and rises up. Also, Morid Sheol, if he rises up, meaning from where? From the Sheol, from hell. In the hell, we have the dead. So Hashem taking out of the hell and brings you back to life. But so this is about death and life. And the second one is about the life in this world. The Lord is the one who makes poor and makes rich. He casts down those who are up. He also lifts high those who are down. משפיל אף מרומם. And with more details in the next verse, he rises the poor from the dust, lifts up the needy from the dunghill. So again, we can see this big transformation, and this is related to Hashem. Right? Why is that? Setting them with nobles, granting them seats of honor. Why? Because for the pillars of the earth are the Lord. This is the conclusion of all what we saw. We say, because Hashem created the world, it's not only the creation and he left the world, but he is keeping, supervising and keeping with his providence upon earth. So he is the pillars of the earth, and he has set the word upon them and keeping them and keep managing all the things that are happening in the world. So this is what we can see in the next verse. So the last part of this verse, he says, Hashem created the world, right? The pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set words upon them, meaning this is the creation. And then after the creation, that he keep supervising the world, this is in verse 9. He guards the step of his faithful, but the wicked perish in darkness, for not by strength shall man prevail. So you should understand that Hashem is always keep managing this world, and from now on, this is about the way Hashem managed the world, and now she is saying also about Am Israel, the foes of the Lord shall be shattered. Who are the foes of the Lord? The wicked, the bad people. We can understand the enemies of Am Israel are the foes. Foes is enemy, right? The foes of the Lord shall be shattered, the enemies of Hashem shall be shattered. He will thunder against them in the heavens. And here also it's a hint for the next life. Meaning, even if you see that in this world they are winning and they are stronger, you should understand that the final account is in the heaven. So even though you can see they are succeed, you should understand that he will thunder against them in the heavens. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. What does it mean, the ends? Until the ends, all the universe, until the ends of the world, he will give power to his king. So this is, like I said before, it's the prayer, the part of the prayer when she asks, please give power for the king. What king? The king that will be. So no, it's talking about the king that will be, Shaul and David, yeah. So she is praying for the future, or she is predicting the future by telling you that Hashem will give power to the kings and triumph to his anointed one, which is a Mashiach. So the word Mashiach, I already mentioned that. We can say that we're talking about the Mashiach, the future Mashiach, but Mashiach, the literal meaning of the word Mashiach is the anointed one, as it's translated here. Nimshoch, Mashiach is the one who was Mashuach, that Mashchu oto, meaning that he was anointed, like Kohen HaMashiach, like the king. So she may say that I pray for the victory of the king, of the future king, the one who is anointed, which is the king. Okay, so anyway, it ends with prayer and asking for the future, or predicting the future, that Hashem will help the king that's going to happen. So all the personal, private stories that I had with not having children, and now I have children and I'm happy, it's part of the general salvation of Am Yisrael through the king that are going to come from this child, because Shmuel, her son, has a special or important role in starting the kingdom of Am Yisrael with Shaul and David. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. And